Next up, we have The Silent Warrior, Life as a Soldier's Family. This session will throw light on the unsung heroes, the support system, and people who find silent battles. Yes, I'm talking about the family of soldiers. This panel comprises Geetika leader and Ashna leader in conversation with Navneet Grewal. Geetika leader is a fourth generation in the armed forces. She has 25 years of varied experience, which includes a 3.5-year stint at the QSI American School at Astana, Kazakhstan. She's currently serving as the vice principal of junior school at the Shri Ram School. Ashna Leader is a third-year BCom honors student at Shri Ram College of Commerce in Delhi, where she has also served as the president of the Marketing Society. She has achieved a commendable feat by having authored a book of poetry at the age of just 16. Navneet Grewal is a fourth-generation Fauji child, published author, translator, and corporate trainer. She has been a part of 15 anthologies, national and international winning certificates, awards, and recognitions in the literary space. Earlier in the day, we launched Geetika ma'am's book, I Am a Soldier's Wife, The Life and Love of Tony Leader. Over to you, Navneet ma'am.
So a very good afternoon to each and everybody in the audience. When I got this news about the opportunity to be moderating this session, I was telling my daughter that as a corporate trainer, we are never short of words. But especially here, this is a very, very emotional space. So the words are going to be very few. All the words are going to be Mrs. Lidder and Ashna's. And I'm really, really proud, a little tongue-tied as well, because her parents are in the audience. So a huge round of applause for them first. A huge round of applause, please. Thank you for being here. So we start this session to discuss this labor of your love. I would like to ask you, when did the idea of writing this book come to you, and what has been its timeline?
Thank you, Navneet, for the welcome. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here on a Saturday afternoon. It's not easy to curate time and from your busy schedules to come and listen. So thank you for that. And back to your question, Navneet. 1 year after Tony's passing, I thought, I used to speak to, I'm in the education space, so we do meet a lot of counselors, and a lot of them used to say, ma'am, you don't have time for therapy, you don't have time for any session, so do you even journal, do you write? And I thought writing was very hard, because it just brings up, all of that all over again. So I thought journaling nahi hogi mere se, and I'll not be able to write. And I remember meeting Lily ma'am at the Jaipur Lit Fest when she said, when are you writing? Why don't you start writing? And I said, I don't think so. There's too much there to touch and let it heal. But a year and a half after Tony and the summer holidays, which actually my holidays and her holidays never match. So that's a bit of window that I get. And so I was home and she was going to college and she had exams, and I just started writing as a journal. And within 2-3 months, I thought it was coming along okay. It wasn't meant to be a book, but then I looked up what are the nuances of coming up with a book, and I wrote 5 odd chapters, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised when I got a publisher. And that's the timeline. It took me about 5-6 months to write, and the last year has gone in curating it, because I realized it's a tiring process.
Beautiful. So we have Ashna with us. For everybody's information, Ashna is a published author herself. So the question to you is, Beta, how has it been, your space as a published author? How has the journey been?
Thank you for that question. I think mine was not as tiring as mom's, because firstly it was when I was 16 and my parents were doing everything for me. But it was also a self-published book, and so it's much easier when you know the publisher. I thought it'd be a very easy process, and I think getting a book published is the hardest part. But then we were also taken aback because publishing was not very easy as well. It's a very tiring process. It requires a lot of editing, re-editing, and as someone who's written something without using the word author, I think anyone who writes anything doesn't want to go back to it because you feel like you're Shakespeare, you've nailed it. So the first time you think you've nailed it and you don't want to edit it, and then when you receive feedback for a year on the go, it's very tiring, but it was much easier than Mom's process.
Great, great. So coming to you, Mrs. Liddar, any learnings of the self or self-realizations that occurred to you while writing this book? As there is a chapter on a life after Tony, so I'm sure this is a little emotional space, but we would really love to know a little bit about that.
No, back to your emotional space, I think I'm blessed with the power that I'm able to talk on a stage without tearing up. And I see the effect reverse in the audience where I speak. So it's always that probably, there's something divine that just happens when I end up speaking here, and I probably do all my tearing up in my own space. So yes, learnings were many. And as I wrote this book, I actually discovered layers to myself. And I discovered so many things that, one, that grief doesn't have a timeline. There is nothing about grief to say that this is going to heal. So the acceptance that this is probably a part of you and you will grow with it and you will go with it and it will remain. And so the process of owning that grief and welcoming it with whatever it has got for you as a learning. Then I've also learned that the hardest lessons you learn from sorrow. That and I'm reminded of Robert Browning in that 4-line poem when he said that I walked a mile with pleasure and she chattered all the way, but never a thing I learned from her for all that she had to say. I walked a mile with sorrow, never a word said she, but oh, the lessons I learned from her when sorrow walked with me. So it is a learning process, and the hardest lessons we have learned about life, and also we've learned that life moves on and you grow with it and you find spaces to feel happy, feel joyful, and yet make your memories happy.
Absolutely. And the next question to you, Ashna, is what is the part of the life with your father that is very close to you, always in your heart?
I think for us, we went abroad when I was in 5th grade, and 5th to 8th we were in Kazakhstan. And I think, I don't know about mom and dad, but for me, those were the best years of my life. And I can't think of anything that can top that. Probably because when we were in Delhi, in India, we were like 3 people coexisting under a roof because they had their own life, they had their own circle. And usually I think it's a very army thing that the children hang out in one room, adults are in the mess. So something like that. It was all, the format of every evening was usually them being with their friends and us being in my room. And Kazakhstan was the first time where it was just the 3 of us. So I think more than coexisting, we learned how to live and love one another. I truly fell in love with my parents in Kazakhstan. So it was really fun just being with them, and it felt like a very wholesome family moment. So I think we became whole when we were just the 3 of us.
Absolutely, like beautiful, right? So there is a distinct reference of the sanctity of the date 8th mentioned in a chapter, and a repeated one. Can you please share some light on that?
8th, actually, Tony was 8th. I mean, numerology, 26th of the month, his birthday. I am 8th February. My mother's an 8. She's 26th August. So we always, we are a bunch of 8s, and we've always been told that 8 is a very difficult number. 8 is, the Saturn's number. 8 is, but we've always thought that 8 is also destiny's child. 8 is also the number of infinity. 8 is also double Om, and Om is there in every religion everywhere in the world. If you see that, so 8 is a double of 3. If you, so we've always believed in the power of 8, and 8th February, and I mean, when I was being brought up, I was always given those, how parents talk to children, and I've always made to understand that I'm a lucky kid, and life as it flowed, I always felt that there was truth in that statement, that, I mean, I could think something and it would come true, And I did lead a charmed life till that day. And 8th Feb, for some reason, Tony had great faith in the number 8 because, a lot of good things happened on that day, apart from being my birthday for us. Like my father's high command course. It's a good course it's a good news to get in the army. Came on my birthday, and so did Tony's, and so did our news to take the unit abroad, which was a big one because it impacted 1,000 lives of our unit. So the order could have come on 9th also, it could have come on 7th also, but and it had to come. So it's just providence that it got signed on 8th, and then the rest is history for the unit. So it's just that we believed in the goodness of 8. We believed that we were destiny's children till this happened, and incidentally, it just happened on an 8th. It could have been 7 December also, it could have been 9th also. But happening on an 8th, I have tried to take that as a lesson or as a maybe as a message from Tony that he believed in that number, and maybe somewhere out there, there must have been something good for him that, that he went the way he went.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask you, Ashna, what is that one thing that you miss the most about your father?
I think it's a very common answer, and it may just sound very trivial, but I think presence in general, just having someone, and luckily for us, we say this very often, is we didn't have any regrets in terms of I could have said this to him, or I wish he knew how much I loved him, because I think in our family, he was the star of the three of us also. So we kept telling him how much we love him. We were very expressive in general. So luckily for me, that is not a regret. But with that being said, apart from expression, I just miss having, I think, the privilege of getting a parent's opinion on things, talking to your parent. And especially in college, I feel like there were so many decisions where I would just wish that I could run it by him, or I would wish he knew what I was doing, and I would want to know what he thought of it. So just, I think the privilege of having a parent's opinion is something we don't realize. The fact that we can update our parents, the fact that we have family WhatsApp groups now with our generation, and just the fact that our parents are involved in our lives is the biggest privilege one can have.
That is so beautifully put across for the younger generation in the audience. The next question would be, ma'am, the exposure in Kazakhstan. 3.5 years in Riyadh, I believe it enriches us as army wives. So what would your take be on that?
Yeah, so 3.5 years in Kazakhstan was a huge learning experience for us. For starters, it was lonelier than the life that we had led in the army here, because it was full of people here, and there it is more, there are no surprises in your calendar. Nobody just bounces by, and nobody just comes in for chai. And so it is, but having said that, it was a life of privilege and a life of representing the country in the diplomatic space. And with my job, it was another window into the world. 38 countries, 38 nationalities, cultures, cuisines, ceremonies. And we just came back so enriched from there in terms of experience, in terms of people interaction. And the two big takeaways I had from there was, one, that military wives across the globe are just the same. They have the same fiber, they have the same stresses, they have the same, they have the same worries for their husbands, they have the same fear of the unknown because they are also moving, they are as adaptable. And also the other thing, that people all over the world respond and react to love, and only love, irrespective of language.
So very true. So Ashna, what is that one thing, if you would pinpoint, would be the point of pride when you saw your mother's book being published?
I think my answer is two-part. One is the method of it. So like the process of her writing the book was phenomenal for me to watch, because to have a full-time job, which is more than full-time, it's time-consuming, education is so time-consuming, and then to write the book at 1 a.m., odd hours, 1 hour a day, just catching pockets of time. And it was just so amazing to watch someone multitask the way she did. And secondly, for me, more than just the book, I think the book launch was a day which I don't think I can forget, which was 8th of Feb this year. And we had a room full of people that was so carefully curated that I think at any point of time, someone was tearing up. And and so many of the uncle aunties are there today, Nana, Nani are here, their friends are here. And this room is so carefully curated, and that room was just the same. So I remember when I was standing in a corner and I would just look around, I would remember faces I saw on 8th December and faces I saw all my life. And faces who joined us when we laughed and probably held us when we cried. And I think that room full of people was very magical for me. So the book was launched in a very beautiful way.
That's a very emotional testament to the entire publishing. If I will be failing if I don't ask you, Mrs. Lidder, what has been the role of Awa in your life?
So the role of Awa came into my life not as the military daughter, but as a military wife. That was the key differentiator, where I learned that every privilege comes with, comes with a duty. That if you have a cook in your house and if you have a gypsy, that means you need to spend all that time to go back and plow it back in the environment and look after your soldiers' wives, and you be with them in their deliveries and be with them for their marital counseling. And that is probably the biggest lesson that Awa taught us, that it is sisterhood that we are all here for, and it is, we are bounded and bonded by love and duty. So that's what Awa did to me.
Really beautiful. So Ashna, 10 years from now, where do we see you? Do we see you as an author? And is the next book going to be In Search of a Title, Part 2, or I have found the title?
Hopefully found. But this is very funny. I was reading an Instagram post which said, if you ask me today where I'll be 10 years from now, the only answer I'll have is it'll be the 10-year anniversary to this day. So very unsure. But I hopefully maybe doing something which is more true to my degree, which is BCom honors, but also not hoping I don't let go of writing and keep it going as a hobby or more like as a coping mechanism, but probably something more professionally aligned to the degree.
Right. In the entire book, Mrs. Lidder, there are references of the Lidder way of life. And I think in some space, I feel it's bolstering you throughout your writing. Can you share some light on that?
Actually, I've coined this word as I wrote the book, and I discovered that I think he was something else. And I think we've discovered that probably through this journey of writing, that he was a brand in himself, and how do you say that about a person? Being a scholar, being a soldier, being a friend, being a good husband, all the multiple hats that he wore and did them all so beautifully. And our life because when I look back at it objectively, when I began to write, was full of impact. And I don't say that because he was successful. I say that because, and I don't say that because he was fond of parties and people. It was the positivity that he came with, the impact that he had, the way people felt when they were around him. If he spoke to you, you felt he was only talking to you. He was in the moment, and that was the Lidder way. That he made everyone feel very special for whoever they were. And he, when he could walk into a room, he could own it. You wouldn't forget him if you had an interaction. And I'm vain about that. And I take all my pride coming from there. So all my life I have reflected his, I've been his reflection and I've been his alter ego, and I have always been in reflected glory of Tony, and I still remain to be. So, and there's nothing so profound as when I look back, I discovered that after 10 hours of being widowed, after 10 hours of getting that news that he's never going to come back, if I could walk into my daughter's room who was disheveled and I said, get ready, we have to go to Palam to get him. And she said, you know why we are going and you're asking me to get ready. And that day, and today I sit back and think at how impactful that was. And I said, you're a Lidder. And you need to dress like one, and you need to behave like one. And that's the day I discovered that the Lidder way was something else.
And having met Brigadier Lidder in person, his persona is actually larger than life, and I am very proud and thankful for that bit of an interaction. What is the future hold for you in terms of your writing work? Do we see a book in the horizon?
Don't think so at all. I mean, it's just that this was a tribute to him, and I just wanted to do this, and that's where it stands. And I don't have the luxury of time right now, but one day, probably when I sit back, and Chandigarh is my city, my evening city, the city for my evening of life, I do plan to then sit. And there's a friend of mine who says that I'm going to have a bookstore, so I said, okay, I'll help you with the bookstore, and probably we'll that time sit and write. But right now it's far too busy.
Right. So आप अपनी ज़िंदगी के फ़लसफ़े को कुछ पंक्तियों द्वारा हमसे शेयर करना चाहेंगे?
Can I continue in English? So no,
Whatever you're comfortable with.
okay,
English, Hindi, whatever.
Thank you. But falsafa, I mean, since she's asked, is actually philosophy तो पूरे दुनिया की एक ही चल रही है. हम लोग में अगर गीता सार बोलें, that is what we live by, कि जो हो रहा है वो भी ठीक है, जो हुआ वो भी अच्छा था, और जो होगा वो भी अच्छा होगा. या अगर आप I mean, शिव मंदिर जाते हैं और बाहर नंदी को देखते हैं, समर्पण और धैर्य is something that it teaches us, that complete surrender. So these days, I mean, children or people our age are probably not following all of that, but there's a lot being said in the space of Japanese philosophy, so which is much the same, mirroring all of this. So I do follow Wabi Sabi in a big way, and I believe in the beauty of impermanence and imperfection. I believe that whatever is imperfect is also beautiful, and everything is impermanent. I mean, there's nothing permanent, so whatever it is, to be in that moment. And there's another very beautiful concept in Japanese philosophy, which is kintsugi, which is the art of mending with gold, molten gold. So if you break your porcelain vase and you put it together rather than throwing it away, the broken pieces, when they come together with molten gold, will finally be more beautiful than the piece itself. Because every scar has a story, and every scar can only tell you the story of fortitude, of resilience, of wisdom. So that is what I live by. And there's another concept there, which of the Yamabashi monks, where they say, which is very much like our Hamara Gita Sar hai, that I think they say the utekamo, whatever, like I broke my hand, utekamo, I humbly accept. I lost my job, utekamo, I humbly accept. So the moment we accept, acceptance is probably the mother of all happiness, and comparison is the mother of all unhappiness. So the moment we accept what we have is probably the beginning of our journey of ourself. So I think this works for me, and it may not work for you, but...
We're gonna have a huge round of applause. This has been one of the most landmark and inspiring conversations of my life. And I believe her words have inspired each and everybody of you in the audience. I would like to thank Ma'am Sumita for this beautiful level of literary excellence that has been brought through the Chandigarh Literary Society. And I would be failing and would be guillotined if I don't give an opportunity to the friends in the audience. I am a soldier's wife. I think we all can relate to, and if I give a show of hands, I think there'll be many in the audience. So we'd just like to have Alka ma'am. She's a very, very senior poet and member of the Chandigarh Literary Society, and she's written a few lines. Ma'am, would you like to share it with us?
On that fateful day, not exactly on that particular day, but when they went to Palam, I was watching on the TV like any other Indian citizen. We were on the TV all the time, and after watching that, I wrote these lines, and today I dedicate those lines to Ashna and Mrs. Lidher. Rather, I should call her Gitika. She is much younger than me, and I titled this poem as Shakti. दम साधे कर रहा इंतज़ार सारा देश, उतरने वाले हैं पालम हवाई अड्डे पर 13 ताबूत, इंतज़ार में खड़े 13 परिवार, देश के प्रधानमंत्री, देश के रक्षा मंत्री. एक हेलीकॉप्टर दुर्घटना, सेना नायक से सिपाही तक 13 की कहानी समाप्त. एक के बाद एक तिरंगे में लिपट आ रहे ताबूत. रो रहा है देश, न जाने किस मिट्टी से बनी, न जाने किस मिट्टी से बनी बेटियां और पत्नियां शहीदों की. खड़ी हैं अडिग खड़ी हैं अडेग लिए चीखता मन, चेहरे पर दर्द और आंखों में वीरानी। आखिरी बिगुल बजा, आखिरी बिगुल बजा, हर आंख में है पानी। बिन आंसू गिराए दे रही हैं वे अपनों को मुखाग्नि। यही तो है अपनी भारतीय सैन्य शक्ति के पीछे की शक्ति अडिग। यही तो है भारतीय सैन्य शक्ति के पीछे की शक्ति अडिग। So God bless you, Geetika, and God bless you, Ashna.
Thank you so much. We have amongst us many from the services fraternity, from the Army, Navy, Air Force. We have members of the Tri-City Forces Diva. We have Sir from Chandi Mandir and Ma'am. And we have a lot of veterans who are the most prized possession we have today. I keep the stage open now for anybody who would like to ask Mrs. Lidder a question. Mrs. Pama.
Lidder, I went through your book, very heart-wrenching. We've all heard of the term a woman of substance. Now, this is not really related to your book, but how would you define yourself at this point of time? And how do you think you can represent this term, a woman of substance? How has the army and the life with your husband shaped you into this? Can you shed some light on that?
Ma'am, if you've read my book, the first page, if you read the dedication,
I know.
just comes through. It is dedicated to the military spouse for all that she is. So it is just that I am standing here. It is each one of my sisters, I mean, whether it's a Jawan's wife or it's the chief's wife, I think each one of them, for their versatility, for their adaptability, for the resilience that they show, for the art of being, I mean, Chandigarh is full of people with green fingers, and they'll know how hard it is to repot and how hard it is to make it grow again. That is what the military wife does. So who else is a woman of substance but each one of us, you included? And that, I think, defines us, that the art of being able to be replanted, repotted, and yet grow, and yet flower, and yet blossom.
I know why I asked you this, because all of us here are not from the Fauji background. There's some who are not. So that is why I wanted you to define that a little bit. Thank you so much.
So I think the military wife, the military spouse, epitomizes the woman of substance.
I do agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Thank you.
I don't want to ask any question. I just want that information.
Thank you, Mrs. Mann. Thank you so much for that, and thank you all.
Okay, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I've just come here by accident, I think. I'm Alka's friend, and since she was coming, I said, I'll also come along. I had no idea that there'd be so many army personnel here. But first of all, I'd like to say how much regard I have for you as an army wife and how brave you are. I have some experience in the army, in fact, in a very big way. My father was General S.M. Srinagesh, who was the third chief of the army. And that was in 1955, May. That's the year I got married. I was 20 at that time. Today I'm 90. And I'm so delighted to be present here, all thanks to my friend Alka. I would like to share one thing with you all, that when my mother became the chief's wife, she started IVA, which was at that time very new. And she had one or two British ladies who were helping her. So I've seen how they work. I've seen how each army wife is so brave and so and flexible, and they come back to life. They bounce back to life, which is their greatest ability. I once saw an article written by somebody, presented to my mother, which I have with me, and I'd like to give it to you. It talks about what an army wife is all about. And I would be delighted to give that to you.
We'll be honored to have it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can we have a huge round of applause for her, please? we end this conversation. Do you want to ask? Yeah, okay. No, I believe the gentleman has something to say. Yes, yes, please.
Yeah. Ma'am, this is Nitin from Indian Express. I do cover sports, but I wanted to ask you, like, how tough it was emotionally to pen down your thoughts, or how like, can you tell us about the experience, like, how tough it was emotionally for you or Ashna? Also.
Ashna hasn't yet read the book, and not even a chapter. I don't think she can bring herself to read the book yet. I keep telling her to, like, at least read it now. And in the editing phase, I used to tell her, read one chapter, give mama feedback. She didn't. I don't know, she's in her head thought of a date when she's going to read it. I don't force her. But yeah, for me, it was bittersweet because it did bring about a very beautiful phase of our lives also, as I recounted. And yes, bittersweet because obviously, sometimes what hurts is not what has happened. What hurts is what will never happen now. So, both ways it is, anyhow you take it. It was a very bittersweet journey, but it was also cathartic because I always believe that when you open a wound, that's when you heal. When, whenever it's very, very dark, from the darkest comes the ray of light. So if you just close up your wounds, they will only fester. So I think opening up the wound is always healing. I've traveled for many lives together, and of course, and I believe in Soul Connect because I have so many soul sisters. I have so many people I connect with at different levels, and there has to be that because the universe has no balances. So there is this exchange of energy, and I mean the fact that I'm sitting here and we are all in this exchange of energy is preordained. So this moment it's a moment in time. It had to happen.
Yeah, another question. Usually, our emotions are so sticky that it takes a long time to get rid of them or, give a new attitude, a new way of looking. So I feel you must be an old soul that, you have a sort of, you're inspiring all of us with your bravery and your courage because most of us, are festering with our wounds. Really, really kudos to you.
Thank you so much in the audience for this beautiful interaction. And I would just like to end this session and request Auntie and Uncle to please come on stage because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And they are the reason why Mrs. Lidder and Ashna have the strength to come here. And please request somebody to escort them to the stage. Auntie, can I please request either of you to share a few words? I know it is...
I don't know whether I can speak or not. Tony was more like a son to me. Instead of supporting my daughter, I always taken lessons from her. Acceptance. Grief will always be there. 3 years have passed. And never a day is there when we don't miss him. But we're learning acceptance. Vaheguru di moj. Jo ditta bahut ditta hai. Jo le liya unna di mercy. I thank each one of you for having been there with my daughter and being so attentive to a story which is not a fairy story. But that's what the reality of life is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Afan. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Or lonely because I'm brave. I can dry my own tears because I know the cost of sacrifice. I can give support to my soldier because I have devotion. I can say goodbye when I don't want to because I have courage. Once again, a big round of applause for the entire family of leaders. With these words, I would like to proceed further